Hello, Aubrey here, and after reading Swimbird a few dozen times to amp myself up, I set out to see exactly what Dare Mode in Blueprints was all about, and let me tell you, it's pretty intense. Upon completing the stipulation behind your great uncle's bequest and reaching room 46 of your 45-room estate, you'll have the opportunity to purchase a Swimbird plushie from the Mount Holly gift shop for 110 coins, unlocking a new game mode that you can switch to by starting a new save from the Profiles menu. Instead of Day 1, you are greeted by a cheeky Dare 1 overlay as you arrive at the manor. Waiting for you in the entrance hall is your usual blueprint, but instead of a welcome letter, you'll find an envelope just daring you to open it. The rules of Dare Mode are as follows. Reach room 46 without failing any of your given dares. A new dare will be added to the list at the start of each day, up until you have 4 dares listed. You must complete every dare revealed to have a successful day, and you cannot enter room 46 until all 4 dares have been revealed and completed on that day of entry. This means that, in general, it will take at least 4 days before you can successfully complete this challenge mode and earn that coveted Dare Bird trophy. What a cute little guy. For my initial dare on Day 1, I was tasked with drafting every room color at least once. The 6 room colors in the Blueprints manor are blue, used for standard manor rooms, purple, which are the bedrooms of the manor, orange, denoting hallways to traverse, green, that house the estate's numerous green spaces, yellow, used to classify shops where items can be traded or purchased, and red, which are rooms that, on a cursory glance, hold nothing but adverse effects for the run. Left out of the gate, I had a helpful hallway draft, followed by a beneficial bedroom and serviceable storeroom. I collected my goodies from the storeroom straight away before checking in with the blue little bird for some much-needed encouragement. At the end of the hall, I decided to get the closet out of my draft pool and was pleased to find a dice and lucky rabbit's foot waiting inside. You might say things were starting off on the right foot. At the northern door of the hallway, I opted for the spare room so as not to waste the keyless benefits of the corridor in the later ranks, and continuing north, the nook was the only option that kept me on the western side of the estate. In the nook, I picked up a key and flagged in my memory that there was a locked chest I might be able to open later on. West of the nook, I wasn't ready for a dead end and couldn't afford the office, so I picked up the parlor with the hopes of earning a few gems from the parlor puzzle game. For those of you not familiar, in the parlor room, there are 3 boxes of different color. At least one of the boxes is true, at least one of the boxes is false, and only one of the boxes contains a prize. With this knowledge, you are expected to read the messages on the boxes to determine the location of said prize. The riddles on the boxes get harder the more you play, and you only get 1 shot with the parlor game wind-up key. As it was Day 1, the riddle was very straightforward, and I was able to claim my prize of 2 gems before selecting the pantry from the southern parlor door. In the pantry was the standard 4 coins, and I lucked into an orange, king of the fruit, as it adds a whopping 5 steps to your overall step count. Up in the top left corner appears your step count, and all you really need to know is that traveling between rooms costs steps, and once your steps reach 0, your day is over. I had to backtrack to the entrance hall, and at this point, the day was feeling a bit dicey, as I had only drafted 3 of the 6 room colors needed for the dare, and the bedroom was the only accessible room. I picked up the coins waiting for me on the dresser before silently cursing at the room draw for not giving me the den rotated the other direction. I didn't want to waste the den door, and also out of spite, I went with the corridor instead of re-rolling, as there was still a chance to continue north from the eastern column. At the end of the corridor, the dining room or security would work to open up more paths. Though it cost me a precious gem, I went with security, as there are features in this room that are beneficial when drafted early, whereas the dining room is a room best drafted in the higher ranks of the manor. A quick check of the estate inventory showed I only had the solitary trunk in the nook waiting for me. Yay, I didn't blindly run past the key like I often do. In the keycard system security menu, I decided to set the security level to low, as I was not sure that I'd come across the keycard or a conveniently placed utility closet needed to bypass security doors. South of security, I picked up the commissary. While I didn't have much gold on me, an early item could prove useful, and I needed to pick up a store eventually to not fail my dare anyways. My gamble paid off, as I had just enough coins to purchase the sledgehammer. Do you remember the trunk reading a book in the nook? Because I didn't, and continued on my jolly way to the northern security door, where I contemplated taking the dark room, but opted for the far friendlier drawing room. Okay, so I did remember the Nook trunk and decided to use the steps needed to go and collect the 2 keys waiting there. To be honest, I was kind of hoping for gems, but the manor often gives you what you need, even if it's not what you want. Back to the drawing room, I tugged on the candlestick to lift up the picture, exposing the super secret safe that you can decipher the combination for by counting the, get this, small gates. No, not gates, gates. The Western draw options were malarkey, so I used the drawing room perk and re-rolled them, ultimately going with the still rotated wrong den, but it was the best I could do without wasting my dice at this inconsequential juncture. Oh, looky Lou, a chest stocked with even more lovely dice. Off of the den was the perfect location for a dead-end room, so I went with the guest bedroom as I was getting uncomfortable with my remaining step count, and bonus keys are always welcome. Back at the northern door of the drawing room, I once again used the room perk and tossed out my first draw in favor of finding a more favorable route. I drafted the veranda as I had yet to pull a green room, so now I only had the dreaded red to ensure my first stair was complete. And oh my goodness, was the veranda rabbit foot combo paying off in spades as I was able to pick up the shovel and metal detector in one go. The northern veranda dig spot produced a tasty turnip, and provided the northern door gave me a red room, I would have all of the requirements of the dare complete in just one more draft. I don't think I've ever been so happy to see the chapel. Consider that day 1 dare complete, and now I could just focus on making progress towards entering room 46 in a few days' time. I was getting up there in ranks with no gems to my name, so I opted to use one of my 3 dice to reroll the western chapel door instead of taking a dark room or relatively useless library. I selected the utility closet here for 2 reasons. 1, I hadn't found the keycard, so shutting off power was the only way to bypass security doors currently. And 2, I knew the VAC indicator order from Bequest mode, and completing this breaker box puzzle would give me a starting advantage in the coming days. Hello, Gemstone Cavern. Since I had turned off the keycard system, I decided to head back to security and set the security door level to high, so that I was more likely to run into security doors. The logic on this being the more security doors, the less doors locked through other means, maybe? Speaking of locked doors, the northern chapel exit cost me 1 of my 6 keys. But boy was it worth it, as I was able to draft the dark room mere steps away from the breaker box. Toggling the dark room power after drafting makes it so the room power does not trip upon entry. I gave it a few flips just for good measure, before heading into the dark room and finding a juicy battery pack for all my power needs. I picked the gem from the northern door as, like the dark room, the utility closet had effectively negated any drawbacks of entering this room. From the western door, I drafted the dining room as I was now oh so close to reaching rank 8 and those much needed bonus steps. Rather fittingly, there was a salt shaker in the dining room that I picked up with the hopes of using it on my food there for a bonus step later on. Back in the gymnasium, I used another dice on a particularly lackluster draw on the western door, and am I glad that I did, as I pulled the room that might be the pivotal piece of this successful day 1. Before we get into that, I headed to the gymnasium's northern door, where I drafted the billiard room. Like the parlor, there is a game for prize scenario in the billiard room, but we'll come back to that later as curiosity got the best of me and I made my way into the workshop, only to find the broken lever. Now, if you've been keeping track of my inventory and know the various item combinations that can be crafted in the workshop, you're probably as excited as I was at that moment. Wasting no time, I deftly combined the sledgehammer, battery pack, and broken lever into the amazing contraption that is the power hammer. Simon no more, call me Thorman. Anyways, west from the workshop, I used the last of my dice to reroll the draft pool and could not believe my luck when I pulled the weight room. Yes, I would lose half of my ever-dwindling steps, but I had dinner that would soon be waiting for me in the dining room, so I was not wholly concerned. Also, remember how I said that red rooms on first glance seemed only a detriment? Well, I would wager the weight room is one of the best rooms in the house, and not just because I like to hit the weights. This room has 4 doors, and a little surprise hiding behind a suspiciously thick wall. With my shiny new power hammer, I busted down the wall to reveal the secondary southern antechamber door lever. From the weight room, it would be a straight shot into the antechamber, if I could manage, but I was out of dice, and so would only have 1 shot at lighting up the doors for my draft. I started drafting from the western weight room door, as without gems, there are very few rooms left that would give me the straight path needed to enter the antechamber directly. I drafted the library, but didn't go in as I was low on steps, so I decided to just go for it and draft from the northern door. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, I know, I could get a straight path but be a gem short from drafting. Yeah, that would be pretty bad. Guess I need to study up on my drafting strategy guides. I got a few steps from an apple on the desk, and clues in the room allowed me to snag a much needed gem from the study safe. Back at the southern weight room door, I used that gem to put down the pool, then headed back to the library for a quick snack and to request Swimbird be here on my subsequent visit, because it just felt right, okay? South of the library, I had an intriguing draw in the Chamber of Mirrors. Side note, I'd not drafted this room on my bequest save, and so was hesitant to pick it up here. But I already had another connected doorway with the possibility of more, so I decided to give it a go. C button, push button. Across the way, I saw a pane of glass lifting up and realized I would need to push quite a few more buttons to be able to navigate through this room properly. Another mirror door could be accessed from the pool, and I picked up a lone key on the bench on my way there. One more button push, and I now had access to a second button at the entrance I just came from. Instead of heading straight back to that door though, I retraced my steps to the dining room for some lovely lemon salmon. Yum. I was on the east side of the manor, so continuing north to the billiard room would preserve some steps from backtracking, and completing the dartboard math puzzle supplied me with a spectacular secret garden key. Off of the billiard room, I was offered only dead ends, so I went with the storeroom for the guaranteed gem needed if I wanted to draft the garage, which I really did want. Back to the mirror room entrance from the library, I picked up more coins and pushed the new button, raising another pane for an entrance I did not yet have access to. Oddly enough, I was able to reach the door of the entrance and chose a room to draft. And behold, there was the garage that I'd been hoping for. Now to figure out how to get over there. I headed back to the southern door of the pool, hoping I could curve around to reach the southern mirror room entrance with my next draft. I had a feeling of deja vu when I drew the billiard room and den, but apparently that is one of the features of the Chamber of Mirrors, as you are able to draft second copies of rooms already in your house. I went with the den since I was back down to null gems after drafting that garage, and inside I found a chest, granting me another much sought after gem and key. Off of the den, I didn't draft a room that would allow access to the mirror chamber entrance, but do you remember how I drafted the study north of the weight room? This allows me to use a gem in order to redraw my available floor plans. So redraw I did, allowing for selection of the observatory with my final gem. Heck yeah. In the observatory, I picked up the planetarium floor plan from the telescope compartment and picked up a cheeky coin from observing the sky. The button at the entrance opened the panel to my left, giving me a straight shot through to the previously drafted garage door. I messed about pushing buttons in the mirror room until deciding to press the button in the very center of the chamber. What in the Alice in Wonderland upside down chamber shenanigans is this? In the corners of the upside down room, I found little doors that offered things like coins and duplicate floor plans. A second gymnasium? No thanks. I eventually stopped mucking about in the mirror room and headed into the garage, where I was able to open the door thanks to the opportunistic breaker box earlier in the day. With only 8 steps left for the day, I now had access to exit from the western side of the manor, greatly decreasing the steps it would take to unlock the western gate, among other things. Heading outside, my first stop was to the outer room off the west path, where I picked up the root cellar. I had the shovel, so I was hoping for a lucky turnip or two in the dirt piles. No turnips, but I did find an apple hanging out with a potato on a barrel, and an orange gazing across the crates at some carrots. And just like that, we are back up to 15 steps. Back down the west path, I unlocked the gate for use on future days, and dropped a coin into the fountain, before heading out past the campsite to the orchard gate. I know this gate code from bequest mode, and could therefore unlock the orchard, giving me 20 more steps to work with going forward. I was already over here and had a shovel, so I dug up the conservatory floor plan buried beneath the trees, before heading back to the grounds, where a blocked tunnel awaited. The blockage was no match for my Thorman power hammer, and soon I was heading down the tunnel in the sealed entrance towards another piece of hastily crafted blockage. So now I have permanent access to the basement and was able to dig up the lost and found floor plan as a bonus. After a quick forklift puzzle in the basement, I made my way to the shiny green button, opening the secret passage to the reservoir. I played around with the cogs a bit until I had access to yet another floor plan, the Mechanarium. But the minecart was blocking my way from gaining access to those other platforms needed to solve this reservoir puzzle. All in all, here is my final day 1 estate layout with 3 permanent additions unlocked, as well as, in my opinion, the best shortcut down into the basement possible. I completed my dare by crafting every color room, and so was able to call it a successful day. Onwards to Dare 2, where I was dared to continue drafting at least 1 room of every color, while also making exactly 1 purchase or trade from every shop I draft. This dare seems fairly straightforward, but there are some pitfalls awaiting if you draft a room like the aquarium. That registers as a shop, yet has no purchase available, leading to an automatic failure of the dare and day. Luckily, I was able to avoid this pitfall on day 2. Right off the bat, I pulled a storeroom for some much needed resources and kicked off my Dare 1 completion with the drafting of a blue room. After drafting the other entrance doors with even more blue rooms, I headed outside where I picked up the shelter for my outside room. The shelter would provide me with a gem from the time-locked safe, as well as protection from whichever red room I decided to draft for my Dare 1 condition today. And yes, I did stick around to wait for the timed safe to open. Back at the manor, I asked Little Bird Blue for a quick blessing before getting back to filling out my manor for the day. For my green room, I drafted the conservatory in the bottom left corner, ultimately setting the pantry and observatory as slightly higher rarity, as they would not be vital rooms for my run. Just off the conservatory, I drafted the guest bedroom for my purple room pull, and picked up the parlor next for some easy resources to ensure I could draft any room I needed to complete my daily dares. North of the spare room, I was offered a chapel that I couldn't pass up, so now I had 4 of the 6 room colors accounted for. Orange was up next as I drafted a hallway just east of the chapel, and I made sure to snag the commissary after passing through security, securing my 6th and final room color for Dare 1. Now to make sure I find the coins needed to successfully complete Dare 2 as well. Through the commissary, I drafted the drafting studio, where I added the kennel to my drafting pool. I had found this room particularly useful in my bequest mode run, so I assumed it would help me out in this dare run too. Doubling back to the hallway, I picked up the kitchen to the north, even though this might make Dare 2 completion that much harder. To me, it was better than closing off that route to the north. To the west of the chapel, I picked up a sheltered weight room to give 2 avenues of travel and access to the southern antechamber door lever. And west of that, I traveled up the western wing, reaching the final sheltered red room of the day, the dark room. In the dark room was a juicy battery pack and the opportunity to see my draft edition from earlier that day in action. Who's a good boy? Yes, this is the real reason I added the kennel to my draft pool. I was getting really lucky with unlocked doors along the western column, but I would need to find money soon if I hoped to salvage the day by making a purchase in both shops already drafted. So I doubled back to the courtyard, where I drafted the pantry for the paltry 4 coins therein. After drafting the dining room off of the nook, I found no dinner waiting, but I did come across another 4 coins to aid in my purchasing power. South of the dining room, I found another coin in the billiard room, and the keycard was my prize for completing the dartboard puzzle on this day. Keycard in hand, I headed back to security, where I upped the level to high, hoping for less key-locked doors by adding more of the electronic kind. Then it was back to the commissary, where I picked up the shovel for 6 coins and made a mental note that I could not return to the store for future purchases today, or I would lose Dare 2. I immediately put the shovel to use, digging up various items in all of the green rooms I'd drafted up to this point, with the added bonus of doors unlocking thanks to the wonderful pups in the kennel. North of the courtyard, I drafted the workshop, where the sledgehammer sat patiently waiting for me. At this point, my only 2 open doors were key-locked, and I was fresh out of keys, so I attempted to find some in the remaining dirt piles, but no luck. At this clear end to my day, I headed back to the kitchen, where I thought it fitting to slurp down some tomato soup as my one and only kitchen purchase, ensuring both dares were complete, and I could call it successfully for the second yet far less eventful day in a row. Day 3 saw Dare 3 added to my growing list of do's and don'ts. Going forward, I would be expected to draft the most expensive floor plan I could afford. if and only if I had 3 or more gems in my inventory. So naturally, the first room I drafted would provide me with gems, and good going. Of course, just because a gem is available doesn't mean I have to pick it up. To be honest, Dare 3 was the one that hindered me the least, though I could see a scenario where I'd be forced into drafting a room that caused me to lose one of my other dares. Because of this, my best bet would be to keep 2 or fewer gems on me at all times. I was offered the trading post as an outdoor room on day 3, but since I had no items and would likely forget to run back out to trade later on, decided to go with the tool shed, in which I found the metal detector and shovel, 2 of my favorite gadgets. Back inside the manor, I headed to the west wing through my crafted purple bedroom first, where I was able to pick up the car keys. Next, I drafted my customary red room, the chapel, followed by an orange west wing hall. We are just flying through the room colors today. South of the hall, I placed the conservatory in its customary corner spot, leaving only a shop to complete my Dare 1 draft requirements. I made both the hallway and kennel more common, leaving the closet at its standard drawing rarity, and was immediately rewarded with the kennel in my next drawing batch. Good puppies saving me keys. Speaking of keys, I had none except the car keys, so I happily picked up the garage when it was made available to me on the northern kennel door. An upgrade disc was waiting for me in the boot, though at this point I had no terminal on which to activate it. Back through the chapel, I drafted the parlor since I was fresh out of gems, and the courtyard provided me with an avenue north along with a sledgehammer for all my lock-busting needs. From the courtyard, I rounded my way to the southeast until I was able to connect a billiard room up with the den off the entrance hall. Unlike yesterday, the billiard room only provided me a few normal keys, but I'll take what I can get. The bunk room perfectly filled the hole I'd created in my roundabout route, and inside the double bunk was a double trunk, one of which contained a lockpick set. Heading back north through the east wing hall, I was offered the shop that I needed to complete my 6-color bingo card. At this point, I had gone back for the loot in the closet, so I had 3 gems and would have lost the dare had I drafted the storeroom. But of course, I chose the kitchen, deciding on the club sandwich for my one and only purchase of this shop, and officially completing dare number 1. I drafted security off the kitchen, where I used my boot-obtained upgrade disc to permanently add dig spots to the courtyard, an upgrade I would have thought twice about had I known what was in store for dare number 4. I wound my way up the eastern wing until I came across the library, where I had requested a certain dare-themed book a few days prior. I drafted the workshop off of the library, acquiring the broken lever that I couldn't use and a security door that I couldn't budge. Using my lockpick and metal detector, I was able to craft the pick sound amplifier, which could prove useful on the next regularly locked door I encounter. Back at security, I lowered the chance of running into security doors and made sure offline mode was set to unlock in case I ran into the utility closet, before continuing my westward path along rank 4. The pick sound amplifier proved useful in the Great Hall, as I was able to open all of the available doors except one without keys. That particularly tough lock was blocking access to a new upgrade disc that could prove beneficial in the run in the following days, so I took it to the security terminal immediately and rolled the metaphorical drafting dice. The upgrade offered turned out to be the boudoir with actual dice for re-rolling floor plans, and I gladly took this upgrade over the others offered. I was too short on gems to dance my way further north, so this day would be over, unless I happened upon the keycard in my next room draft. I selected the guest bedroom hoping for the card, but a lonely gem is all that was waiting for me inside. All dares accomplished, I was able to call it a day in anticipation of the final dare tomorrow, and my first opportunity to really try for room 46 on this dare run. Day 4, the day that ended up being my shortest day yet, and dare 4, the dare that ended up being my most dreaded dare yet, as this added the stipulation to have no more than 2 special items in your inventory. Don't let the word special fool you, as this really means anything that shows up in your inventory box counts towards the item limit. I started off the day by drafting the dining room to the east, courtyard to the north, and security west of the entrance hall. I could see a shovel waiting for me in the courtyard, however, there is a chance to dig up inventory items that you have no option to drop, so I was hesitant to do a lot of digging. Well, I went for the dig spots anyways, and was rewarded with one such undroppable inventory item, a safe deposit box key. Oh boy. With the key and shovel in my inventory, I would have to be extra careful not to accidentally pick up anything else, since I was already at my item limit for the day. I went with the kennel to the north to aid with door locks, bypassing the lucky rabbit's foot on the shelf. This game has jokes, huh? Back through the entrance hall to security, I set the levels to low and mode to unlocked, then picked up the coat check in the western corner, where I checked the vault key just to get the thing out of my inventory. I picked up the parlor in the eastern corner, and boy am I glad that I had checked the vault key a few rooms ago, as yes, the parlor game wind-up key does count as an item in your inventory. Thankfully, gems do not, and the wind-up key is left in the box upon use, so all in all, this was a productive room draft. Needing to get a move on with my room color selections for Dare 1, I grabbed the chapel going north, even though this would hinder my ability to buy an item in the shop for Dare 2. I went with the den instead of the commissary west of the chapel because I really didn't want to be forced into a second inventory item today. I was already at 2 gems, so instead of grabbing the one from the den, I headed to the northern chapel door where I drafted my first orange floor plan. Further north yet, through the spare room, I was offered the commissary for a second time. This house really wants me to have that room, but I went with the bedroom instead, hoping I'd be offered some coins and a different sort of shop soon. Well, north through the boiler room, I was offered to shop, but once again, it was the commissary. Alright, I'll take the stinking commissary, but if you have nothing but inventory items, I'm going to be a bit upset. I did the boiler puzzle to access the southern door, where I drafted a hallway leading into a closet with a key that I took and a metal detector that I did not. Thank you, but no thank you, extra inventory item. I'm saving that last spot for when I accidentally dig up a silver key. Or, the magnifying glass I'll be forced to buy once I find a few coins. Speaking of coins, the rumpus room was offered to me north of the kennel, and I had luckily picked up the gem waiting for me in the den on my way back through, so I could actually afford it. Moving on, I was forced to take the gymnasium due to a lack of gems, and it was at this point I wondered if it was even possible to reach the antechamber given all the limitations these stairs were causing. Certainly it was not possible today, and had I not already broken down the sneaky wall to get into the basement, I would have to keep in mind that on whatever day I reached the antechamber, I would need to have an inventory space available for the basement key. But I digress. I picked up another coin from the storeroom before heading outside to finally check on my available rooms there. I went with a hovel where I turned the nozzle to light the third flame before booking it back through the house to the commissary to make my one and only purchase needed to complete all my dares and finish out the day. Nighty night. It's a new day, but we have the same old dares. Draft 6 room colors, buy once from each shop, most expensive floor plan if I have over 2 gems, and keep no more than 2 items. Got it. I drafted a purple room on my first draw, followed swiftly by a blue across the entrance hall. After a few more blue rooms, I pulled the laboratory, where I started an experiment to immediately set my dice to 2. Next came the customary red chapel room, before heading outside, where I was offered the tomb. Good thing too, as this was the room I'd picked up dice to try to draft, so now I'd have a few clinking about in my pockets for later on. I pulled on the statues in the appropriate order to open the secret entrance to the catacombs, where I tugged on the scythe of Draxus, opening yet another secret passage ever downward. My goal underground was moving the abandoned minecart out of the way so that I could access a certain tunnel from the basement entry I'd created on day 1. I had yet to find the pump room to lower the water level, so I was stuck on the wrong side of the reservoir using the shrine entry alone. Back in the manor, I drafted an orange room, so I was up to 4 out of 6 colors needed, and with help from the secret passage, I could find an elusive green room. Looking back on this choice, it was pretty risky because I had no gems, and if the cost bypass was on an aquarium, my day would be over straight away. Lucky for me, the cloister was free, so I thanked my lucky stars and continued on. I had been careful not to pick up any items until this point, so when I drafted the parlor, I was free to grab the key and try for those much needed gems. At the top of the hallway, I rolled the dice, trying to wind my path towards the southern antechamber door, but was not able to pass up a chance at the commissary as yellow was the only room color I had left to complete the initial dare. At the commissary, I bought a single gem to meet my shopping requirements and opened a few more rooms to the eastern side of the manor, hoping to reach the antechamber as my steps continued to dwindle. I was given the breaker box just after the rumpus room, causing me to increase the likelihood of security doors once more, though it would be mostly inconsequential. I was given the pump room as a drafting option and decided to take it in order to lower the reservoir 1 and fill up the kitchen and greenhouse with water. Out of keys, I rolled the dice and dead-ended myself in an attempt to find a northern path that didn't cost all of my gems. With my remaining pathways locked and no keys in sight, I decided to call it there for the day, thankful for having been able to move the minecart underground and looking forward to what the next day would bring. Day 6 started off pretty standardly, as I opened up the entrance hall with 2 blues and an orange floor plan. Then I made my way underground to mess about with the gear puzzle. After gaining access to the underpass tunnel, I yanked on the lever, guaranteeing that the northern antechamber door would be unlocked should I reach that point with today's drafts. Next, I took the west path to the outer room door, where I picked the shelter to aid me should I want to draft the weight room again. This time, I did not wait for the time-locked gem, and instead headed back to the manor, where I drafted my first purple room, before doubling back to the parlor to try my hand at some additional gems. That I left sitting in the box because I really don't want the stress of failing Dare 3 this early in the run. I was being offered nothing but purple, orange, and blue rooms, so I snaked my way along until finally being offered a yellow floor plan. Of course, it's the commissary, most expensive and most likely to hinder my Dare 4 doability. I picked it up anyways, but didn't yet head in to see what the shop had planned for me on this run. Instead, I continued down the hall, where I drafted my customary red room, the chapel. Around that point, I decided I had traveled too far north in the west, so I headed back to the entrance hall and subsequently corridor, where I drafted the observatory, then my first green room, the courtyard, with all those pretty dig spots that I can't use. To the east, through the drawing room, I pulled a storeroom where I paid tribute to the bird of the challenge and continued on to draft my favorite room of the house. I think the birdie sent me the puppies for added luck. Inside the trunk in the courtyard was a silver key that I had space in my inventory for, so I snagged it along with a gem, bringing me up to my self-imposed limit of 2. Having already drafted every color room, I now just needed money for my commissary purchase, and the rumpus room south of the pool supplied me with the funds needed. Heading back to the commissary, I decided on the sledgehammer, since opening chests was always a good idea, and if I was already at 2 items like I am now, I had the option of not collecting any items I found within. Further on, I grabbed the boudoir for some dice, and thank goodness these don't count as an inventory item. North more, I drafted the music room, where my major key turned out to be the key card. Good thing I'd used my silver key a few doors back, as I honestly just grabbed the card without even thinking about my inventory limit. After a U-turn room turn, I ended up drafting the weight room, so there was still a chance to reach room 46 today if I could wind my way back up to the southern antechamber door. Things were going well until I closed off my only route north, having already spent my dice rolls on some bad draws off the conference room and spare room a bit earlier. I suppose things could be worse than closing out the day with a fun game of darts. Worse, like day 7. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But first off, the worst. My day 7 run started out fairly well. I was offered the tomb again for my outside room. I headed underground to the northern antechamber lever before I got too far into the manor, and then was back topside, happily drafting floor plans, chipping away at each dare as I was able. I had been so hard up for keys on the previous day that I couldn't pass up the lockpick kit I found in a chest, even though I already had a silver key in my inventory. I had drafted all the colors, bought 1 item at the kitchen, kept my gem count reasonable, and then disaster struck. Well, I'll let you see.
And I will say goodbye to my dreams and the sea.
Yeah, I was so confused when the voiceover started, and then I saw in bold red lettering exactly what I'd done wrong. But at least they let you retry the day with your save file unaffected. My next attempt did not have such a poetic end, as I simply did not end up with the money needed to purchase an item from the commissary, effectively losing Dare 2 without all the accompanying fanfare. Day 7, take 3, and it started off swell as my first room draft was the kennel. Outside, I picked the hovel so I could completely ignore gems, making Dare 3 obsolete. And down underground, I flipped the switch to make room 46 accessible from the antechamber. Heading back in, I went directly to security, where I set the level to high and offline mode to unlocked. Did I have a breaker box yet? No, but I was insistent in my mind that I would pull it. Moving on, I drafted the chapel as my red room, of course, and the bedroom for my purple, so now I was just missing green and yellow for Dare number 1. North of the den, I didn't pull the colors I needed. However, my wishful thinking paid off as I was offered the utility closet, ensuring security doors would not hinder my progress and I would not have to waste an inventory space with the keycard today. I picked up 2 dice in the boudoir, and upon exiting to the south was offered my first yellow or green room of the day. I went with the commissary, buying a single unnecessary gem with my meager funds to ensure Dare 2 was completed. As my only open route was now through the chapel, I doubled back and happily selected the green room offered to me there, so now all dares were more or less completed and I could end the day or enter room 46 as needed. To not dead end off the patio, I rolled through both my dice until I was finally offered a room that had a valid opening to the north. Fun fact, I tried out Dare mode fairly early in my Blueprints journey, and this was actually my first time seeing the Foundation. Later on, I had to slip through the Lost and Found in order to keep the run alive, but joke's on them, since I had no items to lose. I picked up the secret garden key for a chance at fruit, since spending steps for rooms was quickly draining my movement reserves. I tempted fate by grabbing a second inventory item in the billiard room, but used it straight away to open up the Great Hall on rank 6. I was low on funds, but still decided to draft the kitchen, knowing I would need to make a purchase there before ending the day or entering room 46. I made a wild guess opening one of the doors in the Great Hall, and was gifted with the coins I'd need for my kitchen purchase, so that was pretty nice. Though I was only able to afford a banana. I'll take what I can get. I was getting rather bad draws as I attempted to head north to the antechamber, so I pulled the walk-in closet where I picked up nothing. Absolutely nothing. To be honest, I was hoping for a key or two, so this gem and item draw was pretty disappointing. Down to 1 key, this next door pick was make or break for the day, and luckily it was make. The dining room was the obvious draft, but I went with the locker room due to my current lack of keys, and was rewarded with a bench key and security door to continue my westward path around the closet. The laboratory cost me steps but kept my run alive, and inside, I was able to start an experiment immediately to set my steps to 40. What a lucky break. From the lab, only the darkroom would keep the run alive, and I prayed for a locked door so that I could use the secret garden key, burning a hole in my pocket. My gamble paid off, and now I had exit routes along with an accessible antechamber entry. East of the garden, I was able to pick up the foyer, ensuring all hallways would be unlocked moving forward, which was great because I used my final key exiting the secret garden to the north. The pump room gave me a chance to reach the open antechamber door, but alas, I would need to find another route. Back in the foyer, the dining room let me continue east, but the way was locked, so I munched on a steak while deciding my next move. I ended up heading north and finally entered the office where I spread gold and used the upgrade disc to add an extra key to the Nook floor plan. Next, I headed to the pump room to drain the pool, and then headed back to the pool, collecting any fruit, keys, and coins that I'd spread throughout the house using the secret garden, locker room, and office benefits respectively. After wandering around a bit more, I picked up another upgrade disc in Lost and Found that I activated at the terminal in security, making my mailroom deliveries contact-free. There were quite a few items still laying about the house, so I continued my search for keys and cuddles, and snacks. Back in the Great Hall, I finally realized that the foyer had unlocked all the previously locked doors, so I now had access to the eastern antechamber lever. I took a risk opening a locker in the locker room, but I felt my keys were too important to risk more, and so made my way back to the dining room to see if I could curve my path northeast from there. The courtyard offered me that option with the least step loss, and now I was just 1 door away from a potential dare mode victory. And yes, the gymnasium is just what I needed to access the eastern entrance. I double-checked my dare list to make sure I had covered them all, and yes, from what I could tell, this time we were there. The basement key and note on the antechamber pedestal were of little consequence, as I had busted through the basement entrance way back on day 1. So now, there was only one thing left to do. Turn the handle and let the cutscene roll. I truly enjoyed the challenge that Dare Mode provided. It made me think before taking actions like drafting rooms and picking up every item I saw like I normally do in Bequest mode. Seeing that little trophy waiting there for me in the entrance hall the next day was a little bittersweet, as I knew it meant I was done with this save file and would be heading back to my standard save, forever hunting for new clues and puzzles to solve. But I suppose that is another challenge in itself. I hope you enjoyed this Blueprints Dare Mode playthrough. Let me know in the comments how your Dare runs have been, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.